Hi everyone, and welcome to The Grateful Gardener in these beautiful Berkshire Mountains of Western Massachusetts. Now, the Berkshires, wow, today is the 23rd of May. 6 days ago, we had a frost, an overnight frost of 25 degrees, and a lot of stuff got burned. A local orchard, in fact, a great orchard, reported that 75% of their blossoms were blighted by the frost. That's going to be terrible, terrible. Farming is such a tricky thing. Well, anyway, following that, we had a bunch of cool days, a little too cool to start getting in our warm weather crops like tomatoes, squash, melons, cukes, and so forth. But we were able to get in some of our early cool crops, and we'll look at them in a little bit. But today what we're going to do is talk about creating garden grids for the square foot gardening raised beds. So if you saw our first episode, you know we spent a lot of time on how we made the soil base for these beds with logs and brush and half-rotted wood chips. Then we made the soil mix, also known as Mills Mix, up at Holiday Brook Farm, had it delivered here, and shoveled it on top of the rougher material at the bottom of the bed. So Mel's Mix, if you remember, is made up of 1/3 each of peat moss, vermiculite, and compost. And I shoveled it all in here, and it's taken me a week to get over it. No, I'm kidding, I'm just kidding. But it is, I then, if you remember, I also amended the soil with 3 of my favorite soil amendments: azomite, worm castings, and plant tone. They have all this wonderful range of micro and macronutrients. It's light, it's airy, and it holds a ton of moisture. A little sidebar with your indulgence. I've always been a practitioner of what they call biodynamic or French intensive gardening, which is all about building super soil structure and fertility in order to increase the volume of production, which is to say, not following the directions for planting on the back of seed packets. Friends of mine for many years worked with subsistence farmers in the Dominican Republic, helping them to improve soil, expand production on very small pieces of ground. Now their crops production increased tremendously. And I always followed those techniques, and I believe that biodynamic growing, or French intensive as the case may be, they're sort of one and the same, is a righteous way to be working with our Mother Earth. Now, square foot gardening is another intensive strategy that helps us to grow lots of food in small spaces. Mel Bartholomew, the founder of Square Foot Gardening, once said, on his PBS show, by the way, that lasted many years, you can look that up. He once said that planting a square foot garden without a grid is like having a parking lot without lines. You can make grids out of lath, out of string, or with bamboo sticks, like I have. Lay this down right here. Cute, right? So some square foot gardeners think that a planting grid is completely unnecessary, that if you've got a tape measure that'll measure out 12 inches by 12 inches, and you've got some plant tags to show where the corners of those squares are, you can do perfectly fine. Now, I did that in this section just to show you, and now what we can do is we can actually see some stuff coming up despite this really cold weather. You can see the onions here popping out. I've laid in a couple of broccoli transplants, some more onions. In this area, I've got beets and carrots, and beets again and carrots. That'll look interesting opposing one another. Up here, I've got some cauliflowers, and I've planted 6 squares of peas, and they'll be coming up before long. So each 4-foot by 4-foot section contains 16 boxes, each 1 square foot. Now, you can make a grid for the whole layout if you wanted to, but my point is that you can use it like this guy, you know, or once these guys are planted here, we can use it and move over to another spot. So these are templates, and they work really well. That's what I did over here. I've got 6 squares of potatoes, Yukon Golds, and another one called Reba. And I've got 4 squares of spinach over there. So like we showed on the other side, if I were to take this up and use it elsewhere for a planting grid, my plant stakes will tell me exactly what's going to be where. Okay, so we got the grids all together, and now what we want to do is to establish a plan of action, a planting of action, so to speak. Now, the most important thing for you to know is where the sun is in the course of the day. For me, this is oriented toward the south. East is there. The sun goes overhead and across to the west there, and north is back this way. The important thing to know, rule number 1, is always plant your tallest plants on the north side, because they're not going to shade any of the plants in front of them because the sun never gets behind them. Rule number 2 is always plant your shortest plants on the south side, so there's nothing obstructing the light that's coming in them. And this is the south side of this bed. There's the south side of the other bed. Rule number 3 is that in each of these squares we have the following potential. They can have 1 plant, they can have 2 plants, they can have 4 plants, 9 or 16, all depending upon the final mature size of the plant. So here's my design for these beds, where every ½ inch represents 1 foot. You can see that most squares show how many of a particular plant can be planted. And it's amazing how much you can grow comfortably in just 112 square feet. Extra large plants like tomato, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower go 1 per square. Moderately large plants like head lettuce or basil will fit only 2 in a square. Rutabaga and beans, which are a little smaller than that, can fit 4 in a square. Leek, turnip, and plants like that can fit 9 per square. And when it comes right down to the smallest plants like carrot, onion greens, and radish, you can get 16 plants per square. Here's a vegetable spacing start to guide you as you lay out your own design. I've added a link below so you can print it out for handy reference. Some plants which are really big and have a tendency to sprawl need more than just 1 square foot. In fact, I'm going to plant cucumbers here 2 in 3 square feet, and then I'm going to set up a trellis, which we're going to build next time, and you're going to see how those babies can run up instead of sprawling out like other vine crops. We want it to grow up and out. I'm also going to be building a trellis for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tomato plants. And that trellis is going to be very interesting. You'll find that very easy to do. And that'll keep stuff off the ground. By the way, if you find this content interesting, be kind and subscribe to The Grateful Gardener. We welcome your participation. So I'm also going to put a few tomatoes in grow bags, which is a whole other episode, and I can't wait to show you that. Right here, I've got a bag specially designed for growing strawberries. And look at that, I put these in about 10 or 12 days ago, and they're starting to pop. I hope you found something useful and informative in today's video, and if you have, please be kind and subscribe down below. Our next video, we're going to show you how to build trellises for all the plants that need them. And until then, this is Sam Bittman, your Grateful Gardener, grateful that you're with us today. Until next time, keep on keeping on.